Okay, let's see now how we can access parameters and search params inside the client component in the server component. So here I have in my app folder, I can create a client folder, and inside this let's create an ID. Let's create this, and let's say this not page. Let's create a folder, and let's say this to ID, and inside this ID let's create a page.tsx. Now let's create our function export default function. Let's say client ID, and let's give return. Let's give this, and let's give a div of client ID, and let's give the ID. But now let's leave it here, and let's create another ID which is div client search params or search ID. Now in order to access the ID, first let's save this. It is running now. After saving this, in order to access the ID and the search ID inside the client component, you can use params and use search params. But if I use this as a server component, it will give me an error. Let's show you that. Now let's show you const params equals use params, and again const search params. Search params equals use search params, and let's save this. And now I can access params.id directly here, params.id, which is the ID of this, which you can get from the URL of the page. And also I can access the search params, but not like params.id. Instead we can use a function like this, search params, dot get, and we can specify the search name of the search URL. So in this case, let's give it a new, or you can type anything you want, and it will parse all the elements. But now if I go to the client component, let's go here and let's show you. If I come here and go to client slash let's say this one, it will throw an error because it is a client component, it is a server component, but we are using use params, and you can see use params and use search params are only used inside a client component. So we can turn this into use client and save this. Now the error will go away, and it will render our params. You can see our params is 1, which is this. If I change this to 2, you can see it will render the params. Also, if you want to render the search params, you can leave question mark and set it to new and equals let's say this new car, and let's render this. You can see it will render the new element. Let's say this. You can see it will render that. But how do we access the search param from the server component? That's what we see in the next. Now you can see we can use params and use search params inside a client component. But if I want to access the params and search params inside a server component, I need to pass like this, params and search params. Now if I use like this, it will render the params and search params inside the server component without any error. So let's show you by creating a server component. Let's create a folder, not in this area. Let's close this first. Now inside our app, let's create a folder and let's set it to server. So inside this server, let's create another folder and let's set this to id. Inside this id, let's add page.tsx. Now we can export the default function server, and we can access the params and search param directly inside the parameter without using use params and use search params. So let's say params and search params. Make sure the spelling is correct. If the spelling is not correct, it will not retrieve the search param and params correctly. So make sure the spelling is correct, and let's say this to any, and let's give a function and return. Let's give this and let's give div and client id is params.id. And if I come here and again I can add a div, another div, and let's say client search id, which is in this case we can use search params dot new, or anything that you specify inside the URL you can specify it here. If I specify this as get, I can specify in the URL and get, and it will give me the element which is rendered inside the get. So in this case I need to render the new, and let's show you. Let's go to the browser and let's go here and let's change this to server and slash, let's say this. You can see the client id, it has parsed the element on the server component, this element. And let's show you how to parse the search params, and let's say new equals this. You can see it will parse the element, but if I give this different name, it will not render that. Let's say n, and you can see it will not render that because I am saying this new. So the name must match inside this and inside the code. So this is how you get the search params using the search params and params inside the client component and the server component. Let's move on to the next section.